Financial management. Corporate financial management. It is the subject that you have in your ACCA, and it is also known as the F9 subject of ACCA. It is very important to all the ACCA students to learn about financial management because finance is considered to be as a lifeblood of the organization. We have to procure the capital, we have to utilize the capital, and we have to analyze properly all the capital techniques so that we can utilize the fund whatever we have in a proper way. So rising of the funds, it is the major function of the financial management, and utilization of the funds is also considered to be as one more major aspect. So being an ICCA student, it is required to you to learn about financial management. If we see the definition of financial management, managerial activities which deals with planning and controlling of firms' financial sources. We have different types of financial sources. To raise the fund, we can raise the fund in different forms. You may have your own capital with you. You can raise the funds by issuing the shares. You can raise the funds by taking assistance from the financial institutions. So you can raise the funds in different forms. So whenever you raise the funds through different forms, after raising the funds, the funds whatever you have been raised, all those funds should be properly utilized. To utilize the funds properly and to manage the production activities, marketing activities, human resource activities, all other different activities, you should have a proper financial planning and proper financial controlling. If you control all the financial sources in a proper manner, and if you have a proper plan to utilize all the financial sources, then there is a great chance for the organization to grow. So that is why financial management includes all the managerial activities that deals with the planning and controlling of the firm's financial sources. And also, financial management is an area of financial decision making, harmonizing individual motives and enterprise goals. When you are dealing with financial aspects, you need to take many major decisions where you have to utilize the finance properly. One decision of financial aspect may change the structure of the total organization. So, financial management is an area of financial decision making. Until unless you won't make a proper decision. Suppose, for an example, you have two sources of getting raw material. In one source, the material was in cheap in terms of price as well as in terms of quality. And from another source, the material price was high as well as the quality of the product is very good. Now, you have to take a decision from where you have to bring the material. So, like this, so many financial decision makings is going to be done through financial management. You have to harmonize both individual motives as well as enterprise goals. One side you have to take care of the human resource, as well as in another way you have to keep the objectives of enterprise. Both the objectives of enterprises as well as the goals of the individual has to be harmonized so that you can make both individual as well as enterprise grow. So this is the definition given by Weston Brigham. So when it comes to the scope of financial management have two types of approaches: traditional approach and modern approach. According to the traditional approach, the scope of the financial function is only restricted to procurement of funds from corporate enterprises to meet the financial needs. Traditionally, the major activity of the financial management or financial manager is procurement of funds from different corporate enterprises. So when you procure the funds, those funds can be utilized properly to fulfill the financial needs of the organization. So in traditional approach, we are going to see the scope of financial function is restricted only to the procurement of funds by different corporate enterprises to meet the financial needs of the organization. Here, the term procurement refers to the raising of the funds. You can raise the funds in different manners by issuing the, as I said earlier, by issuing the shares, by procuring the funds from different financial institutions. Funds may be raised internally, funds may be raised externally, as well as the interrelated aspects of raising the funds has to be considered into consideration to raise the funds. So, and when it comes to the traditional approach, the interrelated aspects are the institutional arrangement for finance, financial instruments through which funds are raised, and legal and accounting aspects being between the firm and its sources of funds has to be considered. So in traditional approach, the resources could be raised from the combination of the available sources. As we have discussed, there are many sources for raising the funds. So we have to concentrate more on the raising funds by seeing the combination of available sources. There are certain limitations for the traditional approach. This approach is conformed to only procurement of funds. But in financial management, we have different aspects that need to be considered, that need to be go forward. But in traditional approach, the financial management has been limited to the procurement of funds only. And also it fails to consider an important aspect, that is allocation of funds. Allocation of funds, preparing the budget, all these are also the part and parcel of financial management. But these allocation of funds or budgeting, all these things has been ignored in the traditional approach, and it deals with only outsiders, that is investors and investment bankers. In traditional approach, we are going to talk very less about the whatever the availability of the internal sources. We are not going to consider more in traditional approach. We are going to concentrate, most of the time we are going to concentrate only the outside, that is investors and invest bankers. And in modern approach, the modern approach is considered to be as an analytical way of looking into financial problems of the firm. According to this approach, firm or financial function covers both acquisition of funds as well as the allocation of the funds for the various uses. As we said that the limitation of the traditional approach is allocation of funds was ignored. But in modern approach, we are going to consider, we are going to concentrate both on acquisition of funds as well as allocation of funds to various uses. And financial management is concerned with the issues involved in raising of funds and efficient way of using the funds and efficient way of allocation of funds. The main contents of the modern approach was how large should be an enterprise, how far it should grow, in what form should it holds its asset, how should the funds required be raised. For all these problems, the modern approach of financial management is going to give you the answer. So, how large should an enterprise be in coming year future, and how far it should grow? For this question, the financial management can give the answer. In what form should it hold its asset? For this question also, we'll get the answer from the modern approach of financial management. The main functions of the finance is we have to take investment decision, we have to take financing decision, and we have to take a dividend decision. So investment decisions refers to the section selection of asset in which funds will be invested by the firm. And the asset that can be acquired by a firm may be long-term asset, it may be a short-term asset. So you have to take a decision how much amount has to be invested in long-term assets and how much amount has to be invested in the short-term assets. And decision regarding to the long-term assets is called capital budgeting, whereas decision regarding to the short-term or current assets is called as a working capital management. If you are investing in long-term assets, then we are going to consider it as capital budgeting. And if you are going to invest in short-term or current assets, it is considered to be as a working capital management. When it comes to the capital budgeting, it relates to the selection of an asset or investment proposal which would yield the benefit in future, because it is a long term asset. So you are going to invest in the long term asset. When you are going to invest in the long term asset, you are going to yield the benefit in future. And the measurement of the proposal should be worthwhile, and evaluation of the investment proposal should be done in terms of risk associated with it, because in long term always future is uncertainty. In long term, when you are going to invest in the long term, you should clearly have a clear cut idea about the risk associated with it when you are investing in long term. So evaluation of the worth of the investment proposal against certain norms or standards. The standards is broadly known as cost of capital. So determination of proportion of equity and debt is the main issue of financing decision. Once the best combination of debt and equity is determined, the next step is raising appropriate amount through available sources. So when it comes to the short-term assets or current assets, when you are going to invest in short term or when you are going to invest in current assets, it will be considered to be as a working capital management. And working capital management is an important part of investment decision. Here, you have to take proper management of working capital that ensures firms' liquidity and solvency. There may be a conflict exists between profitability and liquidity while managing the current assets. If a firm does not invest sufficient funds in the current assets, it may become liquid and may not meet the current obligations. If all the investment is been invested in the long-term assets, liquidity position of the company will be less and it cannot meet the current obligations. If the current assets are large, the firm will lose its profitability and liquidity. So you cannot invest more in the current assets as well as you cannot invest less in the current assets. How to balance the investment in the current assets or in short term investment? You have to have a proper balance. How to balance it? All these things we are going to learn in financial management. The financial manager should develop a proper technique of managing current assets so that neither insufficient or unnecessary funds are invested in the current assets. Thank you. Thank you for listening the class.